Welcome to this conversation of the Local Voices Network, also known as LVN. There are three main purposes of this conversation. First, we want to create a new space for community members to listen and learn about each other's experiences. We want to also connect across groups to build our relationships with one another. And third, we want to create a unique listening channel through which we can lift up the voices and needs of the community to candidates, local policymakers, and members of the media.
I'm Parisa Parsa. I'm the Boston chapter manager for the Local Voices Network. I first was brought into LVN at the stage at a previous job where I was working in a dialogue organization, and we consulted with Cortico on building the dialogue process for the conversations that now are part of LVN.
So the conversation will be recorded, transcribed, and added to a growing collection of similar conversations. And we'll be making those recordings available, as you know, to journalists, public officials, researchers, and other participants and partners in the project, with the goal of eventually making them available to the general public.
We structured the conversations with the idea in mind, first and foremost, to get people out of the usual conversations that are issues-based and hold them to their positions, and instead to get them engaged around talking about their values that bring them to the conversation, that make them want to talk about what's important in their community, and the stories that really animate and give dimension to those perspectives so that they can start to relate with each other in more complex ways than just a pro or con on a single issue will allow. So we begin the conversation with asking folks to name the values that bring them to the conversation, right? So there's the first go round that says name a value that's really important to you and informs why you showed up today. And then the next question in terms of getting to know folks is an opportunity for folks to share a story from their experience that will help others understand where they're coming from and what they're about. So it's story-based and experiential and invites a kind of way to get to know each other really quickly at a pretty deep level.
So first we'll start with a quick round of introductions. Please share just your first name and some background information about who you are, like your age, what you do for a living, where you live, anything else you think is important for people listening to this conversation to understand about your background.
The first part of the conversation is really structured in a go-around, and it gets a little looser as it goes. And then the final question is, what would you most like to have shared from this conversation? What would you most like to have others know about your community that you think isn't heard or understood right now? So we offer an opportunity for that going deep, and then an opportunity for really reflecting on what is it that most needs to be heard. And we hope that people will be drawn to these conversations for an alternative to engaging with each other in the ways that we believe democracy was intended to engage people, which is at that deep level, at that very personal level, and then connecting it to across conversations and across communities to a national level. To choose the topics that are translated across, or cross-pollinated, we call it, across conversations, the hosts are invited to look through highlights of previous conversations that have happened in the same area, or perhaps as we're starting a chapter and there might not be a lot of conversations from one area, from another area, and preloading those, getting those ready, and then choosing in real time where to intersect it in the conversation. So for example, if it's truly an open-ended conversation and there's not sort of an inkling going in about what direction it might go, a host might choose a highlight that has to do with housing, and one that has to do with healthcare, and one that has to do with racial justice, and have those at the ready depending on which way the conversation goes. If the host is pretty confident that this particular group of people is going to go right into conversations about education, they might choose a series of highlights about education and then make the decision. The thing that is most exciting to me about LVN is that it is really that opportunity to connect our very personal local lives to a story and to a shaping of a nation that is really critical and important, and something that is challenging to figure out the scale of. I think we're swimming in this sea of a lot of information and bumping up against a lot of people and trying to navigate all of the differences that we have and still find those points of connection. And I feel like LVN just offers this very concrete way to have a little taste of that experience of going deep with neighbors, whether you know each other already or not, and then to be able to link those stories to create a new national fabric of stories that can tell a truer, give a truer narrative for what we're about in the United States with all of our differences, but what does bring us together.